All right. Welcome everyone to the Recomp Blueprint, a fancy way of saying how to lose fat and build muscle at the same time. And real quick, we will share the doc. So you'll have access to everything in here, so no worries. Don't be trying to take any notes or anything like that because we're going to send it over anyway. So real quick, I mean, if you're here, I'm sure you know this, but everybody's talking about calories, right? A calorie deficit is all you need. Calories in, calories out. And I'm sure you've heard Herman and I talk endlessly about how there's more to the story, and that's what Recomp is all about. So yes, that's all that matters for your body weight. But if that's all you pay attention to, your body composition will suffer. How much fat versus how much muscle you have. And that's the biggest indicator of your metabolism, which is how many calories you're burning every single day. And over time, it will just become harder and harder to maintain your results. This is the classic yo-yo dieting cycle. So what people don't realize is if they're losing weight and gaining it back, they're actually, without this process in place, they're actually gaining back a different percentage of that weight as fat versus muscle. So this graphic might seem a little confusing at first, but it's really simple. So this first half is what happens when we're losing weight if we don't have the right things in place. FFM stands for fat-free mass. So you can just think of that as your lean body mass or your muscle tissue, connective tissue, things like that. And fat is fat mass. Well, if we don't do it right, we're going to lose a higher percentage of fat-free mass and a lower percentage of fat mass. So when we regain weight, let's say we get back to the same amount of weight on the scale, we will have less fat-free mass and more fat mass, leading to a higher body fat percentage when we're just at baseline again. And if our body compensates all the way back to gain all that muscle or fat-free mass back, you're going to be even higher weight on the scale. And I'm sure this probably isn't new to you. Like I mentioned, Herman and I talk about this nonstop. Muscle is very important. Most people recognize that. But a lot of people think that you need to like earn that muscle. You have to be in a calorie surplus. You have to eat a ton. You have to get bulky, right? And you have to just commit to that process and stick with that for a long time. But we have great news for you. You don't have to do that. Herman?
Yeah, so I think like this is just a good point to really kind of break down why this is so confusing with everything that you hear online. And it's because a lot of when we talk about building muscle, a lot of that's coming from a world of influencers, bodybuilders, people in the fitness industry who are like they truly are focused on building the maximal amounts of muscle, right? That your body can potentially build. And they're looking at it from a perspective of we've already been training for a long time. How do we max out every ounce that we have? And so a lot of the advice that's out there, like Brooke said, is all about being in a caloric surplus, going into a bulk, doing bulk and cut cycles. Um, but the reality is there are many, many people who can build muscle without doing any of that. And the research is clear on this as well. So the more intermediate to advanced you become, the harder it does become to gain muscle and lose fat at the same time. It's still possible. It's just going to be much, much slower. And so at that point, people do look at it and say, okay, let's focus on doing one at a time. Um, which again, if your goal is to absolutely max out every ounce of potential of your muscle gains, fantastic. That's a whole different ball game. But again, I think, when we're speaking to 80, 90% of the population, I think most people just want to look more fit. They want some more muscle definition. They want to lose a little bit of body fat. They want to look more toned, right? Whatever you want to call it. And if that's the goal, then there's no need to go to the absolute potential. Um, and so, can you still gain muscle without gaining extra fat, right? Because that's the reality of when you're looking at it from bulking and adding calories, you will likely gain a little bit of both. And that's why people go into these cycles of bulking, cutting is because, you're going to gain a little bit of fat as you continue to increase calories, and then they try to trim off some of that on the other side. So really, when we talk about body recomposition, the goal is like, how do we minimize um, the impact of and give us insurance on both sides, right? So how do we build some muscle while also losing body fat at the same time? It truly is the best of both worlds, right? So meaning your waist size decreases, you drop inches, you build more muscle definition, you get stronger. You're decreasing, the definition is we're decreasing the overall body fat percentage, right? Like that's the true marker that you're improving your body composition. So I think it's good to point out like who is this exactly going to be the most effective for? The reality when it comes to body recomp, this is not a quick fix. This is something that it does take time. And so it's very different than, dropping 20 pounds on the scale and trying to do it as quickly as possible. This is for people who have already kind of embraced like, no, I'm in this for the long haul. I don't want to keep going into this yo-yo diet cycle over and over again. And I want something that's more sustainable. Um, this is going to be most effective for people who are probably around the weight that they want to maintain within 5 to 10 pounds, um, which again, 5 to 10 pounds seems like it's not that crazy, but when you do build muscle, for the next 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, even at the same weight, your body looks entirely different, which is really, really important. And the last thing is, you know, you want to get lean for the long haul, right? Because the reality is, and we'll speak to this later, building muscle is hard and takes some time. Maintaining it is unbelievably easy, in terms of the amount of volume you actually need to do that. So this is truly a lifelong investment, which is the coolest thing about this is that you're essentially like opening up an index fund for your body, right? The more deposits you put in every day as you strength train and keep building muscle, the more dividends it pays in the long run, which is an awesome part of this. Really, again, I think it's the people who are going to be the most impacted when they do this is really so there's a couple of people. One, if you're brand new to strength training, and when I say brand new, I think a lot of people sometimes get almost offended by the word beginner. But the reality is, like, if you haven't been consistently, week in, week out, strength training, increasing, recording your reps, your weight, your sets, and progressive overloading, meaning you're increasing those on a weekly basis, for at least 12 months, then I would still classify you in the beginner stage, which if that's you, that's awesome. Because it doesn't mean that you have never worked out, it doesn't mean that you're not fit. It just means that you've got potential for what we call newbie gains, which are a very, very real thing. In the first 12 months, you can experience significant muscle growth while still losing inches, while still losing body fat. The same with people who have taken time off. So, one, again, going back to the idea of muscle paying dividends in the long run, people who have already strength trained in the past, maybe even if you were like an athlete in high school, right? Had to go into the weight room a lot, or college, and then you took some time off. The great news is you do everything that's, you hear the word muscle memory. And that is a very real thing that it is much easier to get back in shape. So again, if you are a former athlete or just someone who used to, look much more fit and now you want to get back into it, the good news is it's actually going to be much faster to do that, which is awesome.
Yeah, love it. And as you'll see here shortly, it even can apply if you're newer, if you have a significant amount of weight to lose too. Best case scenario, we gain a little bit of muscle while you lose weight. But worst case scenario, doing it right, we can preserve every ounce of muscle that we already have, and that's just going to maximize fat loss like crazy. So, just a few examples from our clients. This is Lauren. She was up 4 pounds on the scale here, but her waist came down 4 inches. This is less than 90 days. Of course, she was newer to scientific strength training and nutrition, but incredible, right? So as much as it is a long game, if we're newer to it, sometimes it can be pretty drastic in the short term. Another client who was only down between 6 and 8 pounds here, and just incredible transformation of her actual body composition, just not just that number on the scale.
And then we've got this awesome example here that we had. We're not saying names, are we?
No.
Okay. Um, But this amazing example is you'll see she's been training with us for the last 6-ish months. And it's amazing because, we had a lot of conversations around the scale, seeing the scale slowly creep up a little bit, slowly over time while making massive gains in the gym from a strength perspective, which was amazing. And then seeing this photo, so there's a lot of conversation around like, well, the scale's up 5 pounds now. So, do we need to make a change here? And you can see the difference from the left to the right that even though she is up 5 pounds, she looks leaner, stronger, healthier, more fit. And this is an incredible example where without losing any weight, to be at a place where you're 5 pounds heavier and now, not thinking about like, okay, do I need to lose more weight? Do I need to go into a cut? Is a pretty fantastic game changer. So I was super pumped to see this picture. She's doing an incredible job.
Herman, are there any changes in how much she's eating, what type of flexibility she has with her food, her social life, anything like that?
Yeah,
Outside of what the visual changes?
yeah. I mean, I would say for sure the amount of food, but the bigger thing too is just not stressing as much about hitting the calorie goal as much. We've taken some time to even not focus on calories as much and just really, focus on getting more whole foods, getting more protein, hitting fiber goals, right? And having that freedom to just not constantly think about like, am I eating too many calories? Just allows you that time to just really focus on other healthy habits as well. And then this one, so this isn't a picture, but this is a really, really cool example of a client that I'm working with who is on Zepbound. So, which is a GLP-1. It's actually a GIP, but similar to like Ozempic. So I'm sure everyone here has heard about GLP-1s at this point. But really, when he came in, there's so much you hear about GLPs that they lead to muscle loss, and there's all these side effects. And so, like, what he really wanted to make sure was, I want to lose the weight, but I want to do it in a healthy way. I want to make sure I don't lose my muscle mass along the way, and I want to use this time without the food noise to help me build more healthy habits. And so, what you see here in this chart is his progress along the way when he joined with us. So, in January, that was right before he joined DataFit. So you can see he started at 259. I believe this is right around when he started taking Zepbound. Might have been a little bit before that, but you could see from January to March, so he lost 15 pounds and he lost about 2 pounds of skeletal muscle. So actually pretty, a pretty good change still because he was down 3% in body fat. He started working with us in February. So he started like really taking strength training seriously. We started really working on getting that's and we were talking about GLP-1s before this. The really cool thing was because he didn't have to worry as much about calories and food noise and spending all his time like just trying to hit that. We spent a lot of time thinking about how do I improve my form in the gym? How do I get more protein at breakfast? How do I get my fiber up? How do I, balance nutrition while enjoying family vacation? So it's very cool to see how he's taking this approach on just making sure he's building sustainable, healthy habits while taking this drug. And since February, So he's down another 20 pounds. So you can see from March to July, 244 to 224, he's actually up 2 pounds in muscle, which is fantastic results. And again, this just shows the power of the newbie gains, the newbie gains world, where he's down 20 pounds, which you would think in theory is impossible to build muscle at the same time. And this just shows the power of, again, when you are in that first year of strength training, there's a lot that can change. And so his body fat percentage went from 31% to 24%. An incredible change. So really, really cool example here.
Yeah, and just such a, everywhere you look online, it's like Ozempic causes muscle loss, and that's just simply what we see if we don't manage the right things along the way. So on that note, just one last one for you. This is a client who dropped 44 pounds with us. And as you can see, that was pretty consistent. And I wanted to we'll just hammer it home and really show you the math on how much more you can be eating if you do this the right way. So she started at 42% body fat, 224 pounds, and she ended at 28% body fat and 180 pounds. Her muscle mass was up by 1 pound, which honestly, like even losing a couple of pounds of muscle in this scenario would be a huge win, but to be up a little bit is huge. So hypothetically, what the research shows us is that we can lose 22 to 46% of our weight as muscle mass if we aren't managing this the right way. Or one study actually showed 60 to 80% muscle mass if we're ignoring all these things and stressed and sleep deprived and all of it. Like doing it totally the wrong way. It can be up to 60 to 80. But let's be conservative and say that instead she lost 40% muscle. So 16 pounds of 40 would have been lean body mass. Instead of ending here at 28% body fat from 42, her body fat percentage would have actually been 37% at the same number on the scale. So if we use just an estimation of her maintenance calories at the end of this transformation, it would be 200 calories lower every single day. So now all of a sudden, this is where you can see that ruthless cycle start because now it's harder to maintain that loss. And so it's easier to regain. And I'm assuming everyone here, wouldn't be mad about getting an extra free 200 calories a day to maintain their weight. Like I know, I might go after some Oreos with that. Herman might go after his nightly graham cracker or add an extra one in. I'm sure nobody would be mad about that. So just to really hammer home, not only will it lead to looking better, it will lead to more flexibility, and this is what it's all about. Herman, you want this part?
I thought you were taking this one.
This is me. My bad. So where does this fall into your journey? If you're not familiar with our process here with our clients, we have three stages. We have the shift phase, which is just switching our approach, maximizing metabolism, maximizing energy, and really focusing on body recomposition. This doesn't mean you can't lose weight, as we're talking about here, but this is the lowest hanging fruit that leads to more energy along the way, not less, and is a game changer. And then from there, we simplify. So this is where we can accelerate fat loss if you're wanting to move that scale quite a bit. And fortunately, we can get it with a lot more food on board. Like a lot of people can be losing a lot of weight at way more food than they had in the past with these things in the right order, right? And so from there, we have our sustain piece. So that's where we are kind of minimizing that cognitive oversight that we need around our food while keeping our results. So seriously, this body recomposition, like these principles fall into every single part of your journey. You can get a crazy amount of results right off the bat in the first 6 to 12 months. You can continue to add to those results, but if we continue to play this game, we will literally I don't think, like Herman mentioned it earlier, over 90% of people are not at the point where they can't be benefiting from playing this long game and still adding some muscle and losing some fat, no matter what the scale is doing. So if we have this in place in front of any changes to the scale or things going on in our life, it's just the common denominator that's going to only lead to progress over time instead of getting to this yo-yo place where we end back where we started in a worse spot. So at the end of the day, can you build muscle and lose fat at the same time? Absolutely. We just shared some client results. Here's some research that we've seen. So this one is insane. Overweight police officers starting at 26% body fat lost 9.3 pounds of fat and gained 8.8 pounds of lean body mass in just 12 weeks. This is insane. Like, trading 9 pounds of fat for 9 pounds of lean mass, they went from 26% body fat to 18% body fat in just 3 months. Men in their 60s in this study traded 4 to 5 pounds of fat for 4 to 5 pounds of muscle in 16 weeks. And then men and women in their 60s traded 4 to 5 pounds of fat for 4 to 5 pounds of lean body mass in 12 weeks, lifting weights just 3 times per week. And so the main reason, like the way to think about this is essentially like everyone's thinking calorie deficit is what leads to fat loss. Well, your body composition is signaling dependent more so than energy balance dependent. So you can just think of it as like basically harvesting energy or calories from fat stores and shuttling it into muscle mass accrual with the right signaling around. And that's why it's so important to be paying attention to other metrics besides the scale. Because if this process is going on, we don't want to interrupt it with, oh, let's cut calories even further because we're not seeing the scale move as much as we'd like. I'm assuming most people here would be down for 4 to 5 pounds of fat for 4 to 5 pounds of muscle while literally eating more at the end of those 12 weeks. So I think, Herman, let me know if you disagree, but like for most people that are, once again, quote unquote beginner or haven't been really on top of it, if we stretch this out to 6 to 12 months, it's not unreasonable to be trading, potentially 10 pounds for 10 pounds of recomposition.
Yeah, and I think like the really, really cool and important thing to highlight there too, like think about that. If those police officers, they lost 9 pounds of body fat and they gained 9 pounds, that means the scale didn't move, right? Like they didn't lose any weight really. They lost what, half a pound overall. Um, but I guarantee you when people saw them, everybody was probably asking like, wow, how'd you lose so much weight? Because their body looked completely different. We didn't really touch on this because muscle is 25% more dense than body fat, meaning 1 pound of muscle takes up less space on your body than 1 pound of body fat. So those people who trade 10 pounds of body fat for 10 pounds of muscle, they look like, and so many people still think that you gain muscle, you look more bulky, right? And it couldn't be further from the truth. You actually look leaner, you look skinnier, you look thinner because it takes up less space on your body, which is such an important distinction because I think it can't be, we can't understate the amount of importance that how much this improves your health, but also helps you, a lot of people achieve that body that they're looking for when they're going on diets, trying to lose a bunch of weight. It's that lean look, that toned look that a lot of people are actually searching for in the first place.
Yeah, let me just show for a visual. So those police officers started at an average of 26% and went to 18% over 3 months. And of course, everyone looks different at different levels of body fat, but just to show you like roughly what that could look like. So they were starting out between this 25 and 30%, closer to this 25%. And they ended up in just 3 months between the 15 and the 20, or yeah, the 15 and the 20%. So they ended up at 18%.
Which
Uh,
like if you see that, you'd be like, they must have lost like 20 pounds.
right, right.
It's crazy.
Yeah, so cool.
Okay. So now kind of going through, we kind of laid out obviously the case for why we do this, if it's possible. Now this is like really the tactical piece of how do we do this? And so the number one biggest driver of body recomposition is going to be strength training. It's going to be continuously giving your body a reason to build more muscle and to lose more body fat. And so really like a really important foundation of this is thinking through the idea that muscle is an expensive tissue. This is something I heard the guys on Mind Pump say one time, and it always stuck with me because it's so true that it requires more energy for our body to maintain muscle mass versus body fat. So if we don't have a reason to hold on to muscle mass, especially if you are thinking through like when you go into a calorie deficit and you lose body fat or you lose weight, right? That in a way, your body is kind of going into a mode of survival, right? It's thinking like, okay, we need to preserve as much energy as possible. And I'm not saying that in terms of like starvation mode or anything like that, but your body's going to say, okay, if I don't need to hold on to all this muscle, which requires more energy to maintain, because we're not using it, then okay, I'll just pare that down. I'll keep the body fat because that'll keep us alive longer, right? So again, it's to Brooks's point of we need to send that signal. Strength training is that signal. It is what tells your body if we don't have this muscle mass, then we're not going to be able to do whatever that crazy ass thing we did with the deadlifts this morning the next time, right? Um, and so every time we strength train, we're signaling to our body that we need more resources. We need more muscle mass to be able to do this again. And so, again, it is really the foundation of body recomposition. Um, it's very difficult to build significant amount of muscles without lifting weights consistently. And it's also very difficult to not hold on to your muscle mass if you are lifting weights consistently. And I think a really important distinction, painting the picture as people always think about as you age, your body changes. And a lot of people will always talk about like, I just don't, it just gets harder. I just don't look the same as I did 10 years ago, even though I'm doing the same exact thing. Right. And so a lot of it is always going back to losing more weight, going on another diet. But a really important factor that a lot of people don't talk about is we lose 3 to 5% of our muscle mass every decade after we turn 30. So you think about how that stacks up after 30, after 40, after 50, like it's a pretty significant shift in terms of our overall body composition. And a lot of that is preventable through strength training. So again, really, really important piece of this. And like we kind of alluded to in the beginning, strength training does not mean, just using 3 pound dumbbells or doing random Peloton workouts and YouTube videos. There's nothing wrong with those. They're fantastic workouts. I actually think the Peloton people do a great job with their strength videos overall for just getting you introducing to the movements. But when we talk about introducing a signal and really building muscle, we need more of a strategic approach. And so the biggest pieces, and we try to think about like what are the foundational pieces that you need to know around building out a strength training plan that are most important. So number one would be the workout split, which is essentially the frequency of how often you're training. So based on the research that we know, ideally, we would be hitting each muscle group at least twice a week. You can hit it once a week. There's nothing wrong with that. Um, if you were to do like one upper workout, one lower workout, we do see more muscle growth from doing it at least twice a week. So the splits that I typically program that I've seen work best for most people. So you could go anywhere from 2 to 4 days per week, and that'll be enough to build more muscle mass. I would say, um, obviously, the four, doing more volume is going to build muscle faster than doing 2 days a week. But I will say that even people who are doing 2 days a week or 3 days a week, especially, are still seeing significant growth in muscle mass. So it's not like this, okay, if I don't do 4 days a week and I can only strength train 2 days a week, it's not worth it. No, you still can. It's just like you're still driving down the road. You're just taking your foot a little bit off the gas pedal versus when you're doing 4 days a week, you're just speeding up a little bit. And that's all it is. But you're still going that direction either way. Um, and fun fact, 1 day a week is actually enough to maintain all of your muscle mass, which is incredible. So for most people, from a practical standpoint, 2 days of full body training. So really hitting, each muscle group on each of those days. I would suggest that over doing like one upper and one lower day, because again, we just want to hit all the muscle groups at least once. And what you'll see in both of these, the 2 times full body and the 3 time full body, there's a little bit of an insurance policy there. And I think this is great for busy people who, you know, the reality is, and like also I have a 5-week-old baby in the house and I work a full-time job and do this on the side. So I understand that we miss workouts sometimes and there's nothing wrong with that. Um, so a full body split is great if you're like, there's just going to be days where I don't, or there's going to be weeks where I don't get all 3 in. That's just the reality. I travel a lot. I have a busy job. I've got kids at home that throw tantrums during witching hour, and it's just a thing that happens, right? So on those weeks, if you have a 3 day full body and you only get 2 of them in, sweet. You still hit all the muscle groups at least twice, right? Even if you don't get that third one. So I love it from that perspective for people who just have more inconsistent schedules. Now, the third one, the 3 day upper lower full, this is like, I think like the bread and butter for the vast majority of people where if you're like, okay, I've got, I'm pretty consistent. I've got my schedule down. I'm in a place in my life where I'm gonna be hitting all 3 workouts pretty much every week. I love an upper, a lower, and a full split. This is what I typically do personally most of the time. It's just a great way to really emphasize each muscle group and give it some dedicated time on its own, and then have one day that's kind of just hitting everything all together. And then a 4 day upper lower. And this is much more for one, if you like working out more days, which is awesome. And I think this also becomes a little bit more ideal if you're really trying to push it to the limits and saying like, I want to see how much I can really grow. And you're more in that intermediate to advanced stage. I think this is a great split overall. I did not put like a 5 day bro bodybuilder split on here. I think you certainly can do that. For the vast majority of people I've worked with, there's no need to do that. Um, you know, you may grow faster with that one, but I think for a lot of people, it's just you're almost going overboard and you're doing a ton of volume. It's much harder for your body to recover from, and it's not going to be that significantly more gains. So that one I would say do it if you just want to try it and you want to work out 5 days a week, you've got the time, and you just want to test out for your body. I'm a big proponent of try different splits. The really cool thing about strength training is that we all respond differently. So for some people, a 2 day split might actually be the best thing possible because their body just needs more recovery and they tend to not lift as heavy and they don't recover as fast or sleep suffers when they work out more. For some people, they need a ton of volume. And doing that 4 day split is great. And for some, maybe there is a subset of people where they're like, I just want to hammer my arms one day a week. I want to hammer my legs 1 day a week. And like that, that 5 day split is actually ideal. And the same would be said for barbells, dumbbells, machines. Again, I think when it comes to strength training, experiment, try different things, see what your body responds to best because we are all different. The
Herman,
next piece,
can I jump in real quick?
yeah,
Um, just so Herman, like 1 day a week can maintain muscle mass. Now, we get a lot of clients that come in and they're like, I really want to focus on this body part, or I really want to focus on this body part. Two things here. Most of us, it is realistic if we're not closer to that advanced stage here it is realistic to be growing everything at once. Now, as you get to the more intermediate to advanced, it doesn't necessarily have to be linear across all muscle groups either. Like, and this is where working with a coach could be helpful because it's like maybe you genetically have, for me, genetically, my legs are just a lot bigger and easier to maintain than my upper body. Or maybe it's the opposite for you. A lot of our female clients do have a harder time building that strength and muscle on their upper body compared to their lower. So it could be a situation where you kind of mix and match. Hey, I'm kind of good with my lower body right now. I want to use 2/3 or 3/4 of my effort and sessions throughout the week for upper body. And then I know that, yeah, I'm probably not going to be packing on a bunch of leg mass, but I'm going to put my upper movements first in all my workouts and prioritize those with the best energy and maybe put some other muscle groups on maintenance mode. But that's definitely not necessary until you're up into that like intermediate advanced stage of strength training.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I try every cycle to, before building it out to ask everybody, is there anything I should focus on? Is there anything that you want to work on? And the two that I consistently see is that most men want less lower days and they want an extra upper day. Or, what we've done is like in a lower, or we'll do like an upper and then like two full body. So they're still getting some of that lower, but men just care a lot more about their upper body than the lower body. And then I would say for women, it is just a constant reminder to make sure I'm hitting the glutes, which we do. So I appreciate it whenever a woman is like, "Hey, I actually want to hit my quads." I'm like, "Hell yeah, let's do that." Um, but the next piece, so prioritizing, the movements that we're doing, and so like really, and this is my personal take, Brooks. I think you've got a very similar philosophy. Like we don't want you to have to live in the gym. We want to make the workouts as efficient as possible. Um, and you'll see out there. I mean, the first time I did try to follow a strength training plan, it was the worst possible one I could pick because it was probably meant for people who have been training for like 12 years. It was called Roman's Blueprint, and it was like this guy John Romanowski who's like, I think he literally trained bodybuilders. Like it was a terrible idea for me to try this, but it was like 10 different movements every single day. Um, 4 or 5 days a week. And usually I would hit the first two and I'd be like, oh my God, my body's so sore. This is amazing. I'm going to be jacked. And then by day three, I would be like, I can't do this. This sucks. um, so I would say most workouts I build out, really, really, we don't have more than 5 to 6 movements max. And we're really picking the movements that are going to give you the most bang for your buck. And so those are going to be primarily compound movement driven, which is really, if you think about it, it's just anytime you have multiple joints working at once. So your classic squats, lunges, deadlifts, rows, chin ups, chest, shoulder presses, those are going to usually make up, you know, 80% of your workout, 70, 80%. And that's not to say you can't do other things. We still want to include just kind of like accessory work for, especially if you have muscles that you want to accentuate. So, shoulder work, arm work, core work, things like that. If anyone actually cares about their calves, throwing in some of that as well. But I would say the majority of the workout should really focus on those compound movements because they are going to be hitting the most muscle groups at the same time. And they're also like we actually don't hear about this much anymore, Brooks. I feel like I don't know if you have, but like functional movement or functional exercises, I feel like used to be a really hot topic. These are the functional movements, in my opinion. Like you see a lot of like people like standing on Bosu balls and trying to balance stuff. Like the reality is like what do you do on a daily basis when you sit down on a chair? It's a squat, right? Like when you try to close the door of your car while holding a full bag of groceries, well, that's essentially a hip hinge deadlift movement, right? These are the things that you actually need in your life. So that's why I like including them the most throughout workouts as well. Um, and then the biggest piece at the end, the last bullet point, so progressive overload. And this is essentially like the key factor that makes sure you continue to build muscle over time. Um, and really, the best example I've heard about this was from Alec Blennis. He said this on the Jordan Syed podcast. It's essentially your workouts and your movements stay hard over time. And when from the context, and that's not to say like, doing a bunch of burpees and strength and like Orange Theory workouts, like that's hard. But from the context of a strength training program, if you were to do, you know, 100 pounds of a barbell squat, at some point that's going to become easy to do 8 reps, right? If you continue to do it over and over, because your body's going to get stronger and you're going to build more muscle and you're going to be able to handle that load. So, in order to keep it hard, we have to increase the load, which means in a lot of cases, doing more reps, increasing the weight, but also slowing down your reps, feeling more control as you go through the movement. And in general, improving and focusing on that movement as a skill and getting better at the movement itself. So a lot of, I think people gravitate towards immediately, I just want to increase the weight. Which again, this might be more of a guy problem. We tend to think that we can lift heavier than we actually can, and then we deal with the injuries later. But the I would say increasing weight is one way to do it. But I think in a lot of cases, bodybuilders like have this, if we go back to like bro science 101, like a term or a phrase that they would always say is make lightweight feel heavier. So slowing down, gaining more control, and just, essentially getting pretty close to failure by the end of your set. So if we have a set that we're going 8 to 10 reps, can you get somewhere between 8 to 10 reps where at the very end you're like, I can maybe do 2 to 4 more good reps. If that's the case and you're constantly there, and if you're constantly there, that means you're going to be increasing weight over time, right? Then it's a very, very likely chance that you're going to be building muscle. Like I think it's as simple as that. Um, if you get to the end of your 10 reps and you're like, I could probably do like 10 more reps, then you probably need to go heavier, or slow down the movement. Whatever way you want to do it, because I know a lot of people too will feel like, okay, well, I don't know if I'm comfortable going heavier on this one yet, or I don't even have a heavier weight at home yet. Sweet, slow it down, focus on control, pause at the bottom. There's a lot of ways to get near failure, and increasing the weight is just one of those ways. So really, as you go through all this, it's so hard to do this if we're not actually tracking what we're doing, right? I can't tell you the amount of years I spent going into a gym, trying to strength train, doing a workout, and then coming back on Wednesday the next week and being like, all right, which ones do I want to do this week? Right. And I would think like, okay, so I do 35 pounds on this, dumbbell chest press. So next time I'll do more. And then I'd come back and be like, what weight did I use last time? And it's very hard to make that progress. And that is the one thing that I would say, like with those classes like Orange Theory, F45, anywhere where you're using dumbbells, but it's just much more about like the pace of the class and the movements change a lot. Again, I think those classes are wonderful workouts from an overall fitness standpoint. If your goal is to build more muscle, it just becomes very hard because we're not really focusing on how are we actually tracking this weight? Are we actually increasing on a weekly basis? And if not, why not? Right? I think that's like an important distinction too with clients that I like to work on is if we're stuck on a movement and we haven't progressed in a while, why is that? Right? Do we need to make a strategic shift in where we have that movement, how often we're doing it? Is it a form piece that we want to work on? Like Strength training, in my opinion, is really, it's a skill. It's similar to like a martial art that we are working on for decades, and there will still always be things to work on. So, um, from that standpoint, I think there's always ways that we can improve and to continue growing here, which is really cool. So the best way to do that is to record your workouts, to record the reps, the weight that you're using on a weekly basis. I think this is why it's important to have a workout split that you're working on for at least 4 to 6 weeks at a time. Some people like to go even longer than those, 6, 8, 12 weeks so that they're not having to learn new movements all the time. But if you're not doing that, if you're switching up the workouts every week, it just becomes very hard to continue to actually make progress on those similar movements, right? So overall, really looking at what is going to lead to the growth is increasing that volume over time. So your sets, your reps, your weight. So if you really think about it, the simplest terms, if you do 3 sets of 10 reps at 100 pounds, your goal over time is to increase that volume. So whether you do 4 sets, whether you do 11 reps, whether you do 110 pounds, all of those are ways to increase that. And so I think it's important to note that's not going to happen on a weekly basis. Um, you're going to have weeks where, in the beginning, you're probably going to see that weight go up pretty quickly, like almost every week. But eventually, it just becomes harder and harder, which is the cool thing about strength training is that it actually becomes harder over time. But it's important because I think a lot of people they'll have a week where, they didn't actually go up in weight, on a shoulder press, whatever it is, or they might even actually have had to go down in weight, because maybe sleep was off, maybe they got back from vacation, maybe they didn't eat enough for lunch, whatever it is, and that's all totally normal. What we're looking for here, similar how we'd be looking at like a body weight chart, is just are we seeing progress over time, right? And so this example here is a really, really good example of that, of a seated sumo deadlift. Seeing, you can kind of see those peaks and valleys here, right? It's not consistently going up each week, but over time, we're seeing that sharp increase. And then there's a sharp decrease at the bottom because she was on vacation, which is totally fine. But we are seeing that progress over time, which in this case, guarantee there is muscle growth. Okay, so real quick to round out this piece, just a couple of good reminders. Most people, again, don't need more than 5 to 6 exercises per workout. I think the less volume in terms of like number of exercises and the more intensity you put into those exercises, the more focus you put into like actually improving those exercises, the better. 2 to 3 sets per exercise. If you're doing 10 plus movements with 4 sets each, especially if you're just getting started, there's a very good chance that you probably could be going heavier and just increasing the intensity with each of those movements. Rep ranges. So from a coaching perspective, we include the rep ranges for every exercise. So you don't have to like really think about that. I could probably do an entire other workshop around rep ranges and how you think through that. But from a high level in terms of building muscle, really any rep range between 5 and 30 reps can build muscle. And we've seen that in the research. Like I'm sure you guys have seen probably things online around it has to be this rep range or this is the best rep range for muscle building muscle. And what the research actually shows is like it doesn't actually matter all that much what the reps are as long as we're actually getting close to failure. So that being said, I do think practically for most of the time, it's best to keep most of your reps under 15 for the vast majority, just because the higher reps we go, the less likely that failure actually comes from muscular failure, right? Like if we're doing 25 reps, most of the time, like especially if you think about like doing 25 reps of a squat, it's not because your glutes and your quads are actually reaching muscular failure. It's more so because you're getting tired and it sucks. And so you want to stop doing it. Um, so I think that's like an important distinction that it's cool to play around with higher rep ranges here and there. It's just going to be a much bigger minority of your workout. Like I think a great example of that would be try doing bicep curls for like 20 reps or 25 reps. There's a much better chance that you're actually going to reach muscular failure there, right? Versus just like getting tired. And it's completely different than what you typically do. And it also sucks, which, but I think it's again similar to like the workout splits, similar to the exercises. Rep ranges are a really cool thing that are individualized and I think are great to play around with as well and just try different ones. And then the last thing I mentioned this, but strength training truly is like a martial art. I wish we could develop like a whole system that you're starting as a white belt. And then if you look at professional bodybuilders are essentially the black belts, right? And there's a lot to learn in between that. So really practice your movements like a skill. I love when my clients send me form videos so we can actually dissect what's going on and look at little tweaks, similar to like how you would think about like a golf swing, right? There's a lot that you're not gonna change overnight. I've been trying to golf for like 6 years and I still haven't improved even an ounce. So I completely understand how long it takes. Um, and I think weightlifting is very similar. Like it's if we look at this more as just a lifelong practice that we want to continue to improve at, it gets a lot easier because in the beginning it could feel very discouraging when you're like, I suck at this. There's so much I don't know yet. Like I go to the gym and there's these people that are putting 3 plates on the barbell on either side, and I'm like trying to use this little dumbbell here. So I think it's just an important reminder that we all had to start there. We all had to figure it out. And the more you do it, the more comfortable you will be with it feeling hard and feeling difficult. And that's honestly, I don't even want to say strength training becomes easier because I actually think what happens is that you just enjoy it being hard more. And that bleeds into everything else in your life, which is a really, really cool distinction.
Herman, you want to talk about rest between
Yeah.
sets?
Yeah. So rest is an incredibly important piece of this. Did Brooks, did you leave that chart in here or did you take that down?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Well,
Um,
so I meant rest between sets.
oh, got it. Got it. Okay. Yeah. So rest between sets. Really, it's again, I think this is if we're going to speak from like a technical standpoint, we could do an entire workshop around rest in general of like how to think about it. But for the most part, you really want to give yourself at least 1 to 2 minutes between each set. And, for some exercises, like especially if you're going like super heavy squats, super heavy deadlifts, and like you're going down to, 2 to 4 rep ranges, which is much more strength focused than muscle focused. But if you are like even those, you're probably even reaching into like the 3 to 5 minute rest periods. Um, and what I would say is because a lot of people, as they get started, are thinking through and I guess even as people go on, will ask, like, do I need it? Do I need this whole rest period? Do I have to sit here and like I hate it? Which I totally understand, especially being from somebody who like can't sit still and I am not good at not doing anything. But what I would say is if you don't need at least 1 to 2 minutes between your set, like if it's been 60 seconds and you're going back and being like, all right, come on, like let's get back to this, it's a very good chance you could probably go heavier, and probably make your sets harder. Like I think it's just a good, it's a good easy way to test that. So I would say at least a couple minutes between sets. Like you want to really be around that 90 second, 2 minute mark, being like, okay, I think I'm good. I think I got back this. And really the biggest distinction is you just want your heart rate back down to like a semi-reasonable normal level, so that you can really focus on, again, making sure that the stimulus is coming on making that muscle signal the piece that is truly causing failure. If we start getting to a point like lunges is a great example where every time I do lunges, it's like a cardio workout because like my heart rate just jumps up like crazy. And if I rush too quickly into the next set, it starts getting to a point where like I'm gonna end the set because I'm just too tired from the last set, and it's not actually my legs that are causing that. So rest is incredibly important because as much as it is, yes, it takes a little bit more time. The more we rest, the heavier we can lift. And so the heavier we can lift, the more muscle we grow, right? So long term, you're becoming much more efficient by actually resting a little bit more.
Love it. Yeah. And one other thing I wanted to throw out there, Herman mentioned like we want to be sticking with the same movements for 4 to 6 weeks minimum. If you are getting stronger, as in this volume is going up, and as you get more advanced, this can literally be like I got one more rep on my third set this week than last week. If you're continuing to progress and get stronger and increase volume over time, you can take as long as the split is, generally around what Herman broke down here, and you're generally around 2 to 3 sets for 5 to 6 exercises per workout. The only thing that would make me change a split up if a client is progressing for 8 weeks, 10 weeks, 12 weeks is if they're getting bored. Like, if you're getting stronger and it's working, you don't have to change anything. Like, you can ride that out as long as you want. But at the same time, totally makes sense to, if you want something new, change it up. Just make sure you stick with it for 4 to 6 weeks before changing it up. So, on to the nutrition side. Calorie balance, first and foremost. We probably want to be hanging around. Oh, and real quick, I linked our sample workouts in here, so you'll have access to these. This is a 2 day full body split, so you could use this anywhere from 2 to 4 days per week. You could do each day twice. There is like a strength log in here to keep track of it as well. So this is a great starting point. There's both home and gym options in this, and you could do it anywhere from 2 to 4 days per week. And another thing is, like, let's say you're aiming for 3 days a week, and you get two one week. Don't skip the third day entirely. Like, weeks are arbitrary. So what we'll see people do sometimes is like, oh, I got days 1 and 2, and then I just skipped day 3 and went back to day 1 on Monday. Just go to the next day up perpetually. And then, of course, if you need to adjust the split to make more sense for your life in this season, do that. But we want to make sure we're still moving through it in the same order. Like, there's no reason to just totally skip a day if you didn't get it in last week. So nutrition, we want to hang around maintenance or in a 10 to 20% deficit. Like we covered, absolutely reasonable to be gaining muscle mass while you're losing weight, or hanging around maintenance. So you don't necessarily have to be tracking food for this. The number one thing on the nutrition side is going to be protein. So protein is like the equivalent on the nutrition side of what strength training is on the exercise side. Protein is going to be the biggest thing that provides the raw materials for muscle mass to both preserve muscle mass but also build muscle mass if that's what we're after. So absolute bare minimum is 0.7 grams per pound of body weight. If you have a ton of weight to lose, you could go off of your lean body mass. So we would just estimate your lean body mass and aim for 1 gram per pound. So that'd be if you're over 30% body fat, for example. We could estimate your lean body mass and go off of that. But tracking food, definitely not required. We did a whole other workshop on intuitive or flex tracking, like basically the journey from if you want to be tracking food all the way across the spectrum to intuitive eating and things like that. But still going to be super helpful in the short term. So if you want to use our calculator, you absolutely can. It'll ask you some questions about your activity levels, your height, your weight, all those good things. And it can be super helpful in the short term to just get an idea of roughly what you should be at. But if there's ever a time to be not tracking food, being at maintenance is absolutely the time when you're going to be able to kind of get away with a little more leeway. Like Herman had mentioned with that client we shared before and after pictures of, she just has more flexibility right now because it's not as, we just have a little bit more wiggle room. So also included our protein hacks guide here to make sure you can hit those. And honestly, once again, letting fats and carbs fluctuate as needed. I would just recommend staying roughly in the middle. Like don't go too far high fat, low carb. Don't go too far high carb, low fat. Letting those fluctuate is going to lead to more flexibility. And honestly, same results if we control for the calories and protein. So from there, supporting factors. This is a really cool graphic because we need to highlight that your muscles don't grow in the gym. They grow in response to the gym, and that requires adequate recovery. So this is just showing you basically super compensation. So we work out, it fatigues and creates alarm in our system, and that kicks off recovery cascades. And in response to that, as long as it's adequate, we actually super compensate and we just follow this pattern over and over. That's what we're doing. And the most important thing, especially for muscle mass, if we want to be gaining it, is we got to be after our recovery. So if we're in the gym and we're creating a stress response, through weight training, but then we leave the gym and we're hardly sleeping and we're stressed out of our minds and running from one thing to the next. It is going to be a lot tougher to build muscle mass. I'm sure you've heard fight or flight versus rest and digest. That rest and digest state is what's going to lead to muscle mass accrual. So this includes sleep, nervous system balance, which is just a fancy way of saying, chilling out a little bit, right? Like getting some stress management practices in line. To demonstrate this is a study, and keep in mind, these people were not getting adequate protein or strength training in, but they compared people sleeping 7.5 hours to 5 hours and 14 minutes. They lost the same amount of weight, and the group that got the 5 hours and 14 minutes of sleep lost 80% muscle compared to just 52% muscle of the 7.5 hours. Now, the reason this is 52% muscle, surprise, surprise, they weren't eating enough protein or strength training. So we'd actually see this way better, but this holds true even if you are getting those things in. Your muscle mass loss is going to be a lot higher if we aren't getting that adequate sleep. Now, I fully understand, or maybe not. Maybe I'll understand more when we have our newborn in a week and a half. But Herman has told me that more sleep is not always possible with the young kids. So that doesn't mean that we can't capitalize on sleep quality. So do everything you can to get 7 or more hours per night. If that's not possible, or even if it is, the quality of your sleep matters. So the biggest thing you can do to support sleep quality, which means more deep sleep, more REM sleep, making sure we're getting into those, recovery periods of the night, two non-negotiable habits on the circadian rhythm front. Get outside in the mornings. We recommend just pairing this with a walk as soon as you get up, as early as possible near sunrise, and then blocking blue light after sunset. These two things are going to optimize, buzzword alert, your cortisol and melatonin production and syncs up all your body rhythms for the day. So no matter what you see online, cortisol isn't bad. Everyone's like telling you, apparently you can't have a cup of coffee on an empty stomach because it's going to give you an autoimmune condition or something like that. But if you get outside, that's going to sync that natural cortisol pattern that increases cortisol in the day. Cortisol is great for wakefulness, it's great for alertness, it's great for energy in your day. But what people don't realize about this pattern is that, so melatonin, right? You hear about that everyone thinks of that as, oh, it's what helps you fall asleep. And I'll share, you got to get outside in the mornings because it's going to help your melatonin production later in the day. And you got to block the blue light after sunset because it's going to disrupt your melatonin. They'll say, no, I fall asleep fine with the TV on. Like I don't have a problem with it. So what's cool is melatonin is actually, it does help fall asleep. It's also an antioxidant for every single one of your cells. Like there's so much more to it than just falling asleep. So what we see from this blue light exposure after sunset and lack of the brightness in the day is that we actually have decreases in deep sleep and REM sleep, no matter if you have trouble falling asleep or not. So I would recommend just throwing on some blue blockers. You don't have to get crazy. I fully understand that it's, some people they have that wind down time at night with their spouse or with the kids or whatever it may be. Just throw the glasses on. Get like an amber tinted blue light blocking glasses and throw those on after sunset or at least 1 to 2 hours before you plan to be asleep. And just give it a shot for a few nights and see how you feel doing these two things. It's easy because you can get those steps in right when you wake up. And, I don't think I've ever had a client incorporate just these two simple basic things, not really notice it after a week or so, if not sooner. So from there, micronutrition, bare minimum 25 grams of fiber per day for women and 35 grams for men from a variety of fruits and vegetables. So we have included some go-to meals of ours that help kind of hit these numbers pretty quickly. And then also included our power plate method, which is basically like if you're not tracking your food or you are tracking your food and you're on vacation or you're out to eat and it's just not as possible to be tracking, this is a great go-to way to just learn how to build a basic plate, having that lean protein, having some of those fibrous vegetables, having some complex carbohydrates is going to be a great way to go about it. This is going to, this fills in, of course, if all you pay attention to are the calories and the protein, that can be great. These micronutrients are really going to support every system of your body. Not going to be some night and day magic thing, but it's very, very important for health overall. Not to mention the fiber is going to keep you more full and support cholesterol, all the things like that. And then lastly, stress management. What I just mentioned. Sympathetic nervous system is that fight or flight, right? High heart rate, on edge. Parasympathetic is rest and digest. Most of us, if not all of us, we just need to chill out a little bit throughout our day. So even just a few moments of this can drastically help your recovery, your ability to handle this progressive overload we're after with our workouts, especially around your meals. If we can use, a super basic way to do this and start to incorporate it is just at each meal, let's slow down. Let's maybe put the phone away. Let's check in with ourselves, take a few deep breaths, really chew our food. Because if we're in our workday and going from appointment to appointment, thing to thing, and then we get to our meal and we just eat it as fast as possible, we truly aren't going to get as much of those nutrients and optimal digestion out of those meals as we would if we can really slow ourselves down. So this is one, none of these are magic. There are no rules, only tools. I just heard this quote recently and I love it because some of these things might be great for one person and other people like journaling. I don't like journaling. Some people love journaling and it's great. And I've tried, I don't want to do it. And so I don't, but I love meditation and other people hate that. So it's all for you. Like try things, see what resonates. But just some general ideas. So breath, uh, general recommendation here, slow down the exhale. So if we are extending our exhales longer than our inhales, it activates your parasympathetic nervous system and really slows things down. So an easy one here is you could try it's called 4-7-8 breathing. So you're going to do a 4-second inhale through the nose, 7-second hold, and then an 8-second exhale. So that's double the inhale, and it really just slows things down. And the cool thing about the breath is you can do it anywhere, right? You don't need like your meditation cushion or anything with you. You can just incorporate that. And even if it's not like, okay, counting your breaths or anything, just paying attention to it. Like noticing your breathing can be very centering very quickly and take you out of your head that we're always, thinking about yesterday, thinking about tomorrow, all those things. But beyond that, reading a book, trying meditation. Shakti mat has been a tool in my toolkit lately. It's just an acupressure mat with a bunch of little pins on it. You lay on it, it's pretty uncomfortable, and then your body really relaxes into it. So I'll lay on that and read before bed. I love that. Literally just getting outside, limiting screens. One for me is there's an app called Freedom, and you can basically lock yourself out of the internet or of social media apps or anything like that. I set mine up to go on every night at 8 p.m. and turn back on, and then let me back in the mornings at 6 a.m. Uh, when 8 p.m. hits and it locks me out, if I'm scrolling my phone, there's like this slight panic. And then immediately after, it's just like relief. Like, oh, I don't even have the option to go watch a video or learn more things right now. I physically can't. So I can just relax a little bit. So try what works for you. But seriously, like even if you just start to sit down and pay a little bit more attention to when you eat each meal, that can be a great way to just slow yourself down. Because if we allow ourselves to really embrace that fight or flight throughout the day, which can be very helpful for focus and productivity, if we let that run too wild, we end up kind of crashing on at some point, right? So from there, monitoring, well, Herman, I think this is your section.
Yeah. So real quick on the stress piece. I think one thing too that I would say here is like if you really think about it and you just examine your own day to day, your own life, you probably can think of the things that reduce stress. And you probably can think of the things that add stress. Like if you actually just try to be mindful to it. Like I know for me, literally just putting my phone away, putting on music and cooking a meal is like puts me in a flow state. Like it's just it allows me to decompress from things. Same with going for a walk and listening to music. Or on the flip side of that, many times when I feel just like that, like I need to do something, I'm anxious, there's a lot going on, like I have so much to do. A lot of times it's just I've just been on my phone too much for the last like 3 hours. And so literally like putting my phone away, hanging out with my wife, our baby, like sitting in the backyard, just relaxing for 20 minutes changes the entire day and changes my entire mood. So I think like having some of those practices that, and to Brooke's point, like some people love meditation, some people love yoga, journaling, whatever it is great. And exploring those and trying those. And I would even challenge Brooks when he said that, like, I hate doing this. Like, if you hate it, it might be the thing that you actually need to do a little bit more. Um, but that being said, it also could just be like very simple day-to-day things that you already know calm yourself down more, right? So think through that a little bit more as well. Now, shifting to how do we actually make sure that we're making progress, right? Because I think with body recomposition, like the hard thing that we talked about here is, okay, this is the long game. We're not going to just focus on the scale and the number, and like we're just going to do this over time. It's a lifelong process, and all that sounds amazing. But at the same time, I know you're all sitting here going, but like, how do I actually know this is actually working, right? Like, what is happening? Am I actually moving in the right direction? Um, and so it is important still to have some ways to measure progress. And I think the really important here to note first is that you really need to understand what progress are you looking for. So, because I do think with body recomposition, like we talked about, if you do want to lose some weight, then we're going to do this while eating in a slight deficit. If you don't care about that as much, we're going to do this while eating at maintenance. So we need to decide that first, right? We need to decide if we're looking at the scale at all as a tool. And I would say for a lot of people, like if you have significant body fat to lose, meaning you're at a body fat percentage where it's actually impacting your health, and you want to get down to a healthy body fat percent level, then I would probably start here and go for the calorie deficit of 10 to 20% while doing this until you get to into a range that's considered a healthy body fat percent. Um, and in that case, we would still be using the scale, right? Like we would still be looking at the scale going down as you're losing weight to make sure that we're actually eating in a deficit. But that being said, it's certainly not going to be as useful as other areas where like we're just focusing on weight loss. And then if you're looking at it and saying, I don't really care about losing that much weight. I'm in a pretty healthy body fat percent level. I just want to see my body composition improve over time. And maybe I want to lose 5 to 10 pounds eventually, which I would say if you're sitting here and saying, I want to lose about 5 to 10 pounds, I probably would not worry about going into a deficit and looking at the scale as much because those 5 to 10 pounds, I think you're going to essentially see as you transform your body with just body recomposition alone. And I think that you'll notice that you might be 10 pounds heavier than you thought you had to be, but your body looks completely different. You're like, no, I'm good. I'm cool here, which is a great place to be. So that being said, we just want to make sure that the scale is it's just one tool. It's just one way to measure progress. But at the same time, I think photos are incredibly get it. Um, Nobody wants to have to take a photo of themselves. I get it. But it is very important because these changes are slow. You're not going to see a 30-day transformation that you see online. Those are not real. But if you look at it, those photos that we showed you, right? A lot of them were like 6 months later. And so it's really hard when you're looking in the mirror every day and you're going, I don't, I think this is maybe working. Like, I don't really know. But when you see a picture of yourself 3 months later, 4 months later, 5 months, 6 months, right? Um, even I think I can't remember who said this, maybe Stan Efferding or somebody. He said, I wish that there was a rule that for the first 2 years of strength training, you weren't allowed to take your shirt off because so many people give up too soon because they're like, oh, this isn't working. Like my body isn't so crazy different. But again, it is a very compound effect that over time, it's little small gradual changes that lead up to a big transformation. So photos help you see that. How your clothes fit is a significant one that in the beginning it's usually what people feel first. And a lot of people, and I think this is important to note that when you first start strength training, what people notice immediately the first couple of weeks is the scale actually slightly goes up. And it's like always the panic button. Everybody freaks out. They're like, why is the scale going up? Is this not working? And a big reason for that is as your body starts to build more muscle, as you start working out more, especially as you start really signaling that we need more muscle mass, your body is going to store more glycogen in the muscles, which with glycogen, we hold more water weight. And so we see the scale go up initially. And eventually that will come down after a few weeks. So just know that if you are getting started, that is a very, very normal thing. Do not freak out. You're not doing anything wrong. But what I usually will hear after the first 30 days to 60 days is, I don't know if this is working because the scale hasn't moved at all. It's still where it is, but my clothes are all fitting better. This is really weird. I'm fitting into jeans that I haven't fit in before. And it's like, that is the classic, okay, sweet. So your clothes are fitting better. Your waist size is down because you're fitting into jeans that you haven't fit in before. The scale hasn't moved. What does that tell you? It tells you that we have built more muscle and we've lost more body fat, right? So a really, really important indicator. If you're looking and saying, I don't really know if this is working because the scale hasn't changed, but all my clothes fit better, great. That is a good sign of progress. Um, and then I think your overall gym performance as well, because at the end of the day, your strength in the gym, meaning your overall volume, progressive overload, like have you increased weight, have you increased reps, sets, etc. You can increase strength without increasing muscle, but the reality is like if you look at all the people in the gym who are lifting crazy amounts of weight, find me one person that doesn't have a significant amount of muscle mass on them. Like if we are getting stronger over time, we are building muscle mass. Um, there's no doubt about that. So if at the end of the day, if we are getting stronger in the gym, our waist size is going down, and we are seeing the scale stay the same, it's a very, very good bet that this is working. And you'll see that through higher close fit and how you look in progress photos. Um, then the last thing, so we talked about body fat percentage. And I do think, being totally transparent, it's a little bit overrated to like actually try to understand what your body composition is through testing. Things like in-body scans, especially, even, one, I would say, okay, the bathroom scales that tell you your body composition, you can throw that number out entirely. Those aren't even remotely accurate. They're going to drive you crazy if you try to look at that because they vary so much. In-body scans are going to be much, much more accurate than those bathroom scales, but still will have a lot of variability. They have a lot to do with the water weight that you have, how much water you drank that day or the day before, the food that you ate. They have a very hard time discerning between muscle mass and water composition within your body. So, if you really do want to understand what your body fat percentage is, I mean, the only 100% accurate way to do that is an autopsy, which I would not recommend. Um, but the closest thing that we have is a DEXA scan, which you can find actually, the cheapest place I found to do them is like a lot of local colleges will offer them, because they'll have students who are doing, they're doing it for their own classes and they're learning how to use the equipment. Um, so like I think I paid like $40 for a scan at our local university, which was great. So look at that as an option if you really want it. But I think with all of those things, I would just look at it with a grain of salt, the actual number itself. Like don't get a DEXA scan or an in-body or whatever and look at the number and be like, oh my God, I'm 27% body fat. I had to do some dramatic changes because it's not 100% accurate. What I would look at, and I think it is useful for, is trend changes over time. So if you do want to look and say like, no, I understand it's not going to be perfect, but I do want to see how it changes. So maybe it says 27 one month, then it says 26, then it says, 26 again, then it says 25. And it's like you're slowly seeing that trajectory. That's probably a pretty good bet that you're seeing body recomposition, or vice versa, right? So again, use those with a grain of salt. They're not perfect, but I think at the end of the day, if you're looking at that first whole piece of your photos, higher clothes fit, your waist size, and all that's moving in the right direction, you could feel pretty confident that it's working.
So, wrapping it all up, checklist. I mean, the most important thing here is the strength training. At least 3 days a week. Those studies we showed, even the one that they traded 9 pounds for 9 pounds in just 12 weeks, they were doing 3 days a week of strength training. Like that is incredibly powerful. And I think the biggest takeaway over time that's so cool to me about this is that it allows you to really get through any season of your life and get the most out of it. Like if there is a stressful time and the scale is coming up and you're up 5 to 10 pounds, if you have your strength training down and your protein down, at least you're going to build some muscle. And then when you lose some weight and you have your strength training and your protein in, at least you're going to maximize fat loss. And so it's like, it's just this, yes, of course, shorter term, excessive weight gain can lead to more fat accumulation in those things, but it's just the common denominator, no matter what your goal is. It's going to make you healthier and it's going to make you leaner and it's going to lead to looking better over time, no matter what the seasons are doing on the scale. So those two core things. And then of course, to support that, walking 8,000 steps per day or more, keeping your calorie intake near maintenance or a 10 to 20% deficit, getting 80% of those calories from mostly whole foods, leading to 25 or 35 grams of fiber for women and men, respectively, getting that 10 minutes of morning sunlight, blocking that blue light after sunset, and then trying things out. What helps you chill out a little bit, even if it's just for a couple minutes? And I guess I should add, wait. Wait a long time. Like, of course, yeah, pay attention to progress and like we mentioned, but this is the long game. And there's no way to get around these things. Like, of course, get some blood work done. Get these other things done, but do not wait on these things because these are the common denominators no matter what your goals are. Like we could title this workshop balance your hormones and give you this list and it's going to help your hormone panels. Like we could title this workshop help your gut health and this list will help your gut health. Like there isn't any factor of your health that this list will not improve. Um, and so from there, if you want our help, like this is the blueprint. It's, Herman and I always kind of joke like for our marketing, there's not really a thing. Our thing is that there is no thing. Like there's no thing. And the thing is doing this well over time with a well-structured strength training plan and a well-rounded, balanced nutrition plan that you can actually stick to over time and getting ruthlessly consistent on the basics. So we do have two options. We have one-on-one coaching, but we also have group coaching. Herman, do you want to share about the Fit for Life group coaching option?
Yeah. Yeah. So Fit for Life, we started, this is gonna be the third month of it, right, Brooks? Or third training cycle that we're doing
Yep.
coming up. So really the purpose of this was, look, I think one-on-one coaching is incredibly valuable. I think it's great for like really digging into personalized needs, really learning you as an individual, building out your training plans for your specific goals, and working through, the accountability factor because all of us, myself included, even as a coach, we do a little bit better when we actually have somebody there, making sure that we're held accountable to the things that we need to do. And so I think one-on-one coaching is fantastic, especially as people are getting started with this, to really just get to understand all the ins and outs, work on these foundational habits, and get into a place where you feel really confident on doing all this on your own. That being said, we also heard from a lot of people um, it's just not an affordable option for their budgets. And we've heard from other people, they don't necessarily need all that, right? They don't necessarily need a coach that they're talking to on a consistent one-on-one basis. And they also don't necessarily care as much about it being personalized. They're like, I just need the plan. I just need it. I just need something to do. Um, and I need something that fits into my budget based on where I currently am today. So that was where Fit for Life kind of came from. And why we created it was because we wanted to make sure that we still had an option for those people. And so really what it is you get a consistent strength training plan that is, it's not personalized, but you do get to pick between a 3-day plan or a 4-day plan. And then we also have options that are full gym and then also an option for at home only. So with there, you can be dumbbells, resistance bands, and a bench is really all you need. And your plan gets updated every 6 weeks. So you get access to an app that we use with all of our one-on-one clients where you can track your workouts. And we just added the feature too that if you tell us, because we do have a group chat in there with me, Brooks, and anyone that is part of Fit for Life. So if you do have questions that you want to ask around fitness, strength training or nutrition, you are more than welcome to ask your question in there and we will answer each of those questions. And if you tell us what your calorie goal is and what your macro goals are, we'll actually enter that for you into the app so you can track your nutrition right in the app as well. So a great option. It gives you a lot of the benefits of one-on-one coaching. Obviously just without that actual coach in your corner, but I think it's a wonderful addition for people who, one, are just getting started and don't necessarily need all that. They just want to plan to be consistent, or for people who have been doing this for a long time and are just kind of ready for to just go off on their own and really try this on a consistent basis without that one-on-one coach aspect.
Sweet. Yeah. And that's just 37 bucks a month actually. So you get access to our app. You can come to these workshops included. And then of course, one-on-one coaching we have as well. This is if you want more customization, like you want the nutrition plan, you want the calorie targets and the adjustments made for you. But really, it's about the access to a coach. So Herman or myself throughout the week, every single week, planning with you, unlimited messaging. We do check-ins weekly, and we do have an option for less frequently. But this is kind of what I alluded to earlier. I mean, our process for our system is three pieces: shift, simplify, and sustain. So shift is really about embracing what we just talked about in this workshop. So making sure we maximize your metabolism, go after the lowest hanging fruit, get you feeling better along the way, not worse, so that you can actually stick to it. And we honestly milk that stage for as long as we can. Like there's no reason if we're adequately building muscle and losing fat, we do see people that if they have some weight to lose, they end up losing a decent amount of weight during that shift piece just by putting these pieces in place. And I think the biggest thing about the one-on-one side is adherence, right? Like the best predictor of your results is adherence. And if you need that accountability, you need that support on the mindset side, you want and just customization, right? So the Fit for Life isn't going to be customized. This is going to be a customized routine changed directly for you. We'll have eyes on your photos, your body measurements, the scale, your nutrition plan, all managed through the app and adjusted for you. And then we move to simplify when we're ready to continue to support muscle mass, maintain it, or keep building it while losing weight if you need to. If you don't need to, we jump from the shift phase to the sustain phase. And but if you need to, getting you that fat loss and that weight loss kind of accelerated on as many calories as possible so that it's just more flexible, right? And then our sustain piece is all about balance. So if we cut something out entirely, you're just going to want it even more. So finding what balance looks like for you, maximizing your energy, maximizing flexibility to be able to manage vacations, holidays, social events without having anxiety around like what's the scale going to say when I get back? How do I manage this? How do I keep this in play? So the best way or my favorite way to summarize our one-on-one is basically we do three things for you. The first is just get you the right map, personalized to you. So I like to say it, it's like you've had a map from New York to Miami. Problem is you've been standing in California. So no matter how hard you try, that map won't get you where you want to go. You haven't been failing, your map has been failing you, and we just simplify it and get you the right map. And then next is the right process. So customizing it for you, your body, your lifestyle, your workload, your home life. It's not a cookie cutter, one size fits all approach. It's a one of a kind process customized specifically for you. And what I'd throw in there is we do have partners for like we're not saying that hormones don't matter. We're just not going to tell you that it's the only thing keeping you from your goals. So we have a partner if we want to get lab work, if we want to get, hormones checked up, if we want to get things addressed, we can incorporate that. And that's what we would also pair with that shift phase. And then lastly, it's just the right support. So research shows us when people have the right support system, someone in their corner, they get faster, easier, and longer term results than not having that. So if you're interested in the one-on-one side or Fit for Life, just shoot me an email, shoot me a DM, shoot me a text, whatever works, and we can share options and figure out what makes the most sense for you. Or if you wanted to hop on a call and hear more, happy to give you my opinion on what you might need. But with that, let's go to questions, coaching, support, anything at all.
I got one question. Herman kind of, I had a few, but Herman kind of answered most of them towards the end. So at the beginning, this is gonna sound a bit like a criticism, but really I mean it as a question. Um, so at the beginning, you were talking about some of the success stories, particularly like some of the police officers trading 9 pounds of fat for 9 pounds of muscle. You had the pictures of some of the clients and their success stories, which were awesome. Um, but talking about the body fat percentages, and then at the end saying, "Well, but they're highly inaccurate." Well, so my question is, well, what did you use to measure those body fat percentages on those success stories?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, right. It's not perfect. These, where are those studies? Typically the studies will be a bit better. I've never seen studies using like an in-body. They'll
Okay.
they'll usually use an underwater way, which is basically like you blow out all your air and there's this scale suspended in a big tank of water and it measures like how much you weigh while you're underwater and it can extrapolate fat versus lean mass, which
Hmm.
is definitely like the DEXA a lot better. So that's what most research studies will use. Our
Okay.
clients, honestly, it's in-body scans, so it's not perfect. It could be plus or minus. The most important thing is keeping it consistent over time. So that's like when Herman was talking about, I would honestly throw like ±5 in each direction. But if we're using them first thing in the morning over time for a general trend, but no, these aren't perfect. Yeah, and I think Herman was the biggest thing is like if we zoom out over a year, like it can eliminate some of that noise. But yeah, not perfect. So it could be either way, but kind of like our calorie tracking, right? Like we're
Yeah.
probably plus or minus 100 to 200 calories at any given point on any given day. But if we measure
Yeah.
consistently the same way each time, we can get generally close.
Okay.
I also
I don't
think that's
imagine.
why it's so like the photos and how your clothes fit are such important factors, right? Like those images that we showed above, that was like each body fat percentage. Like I it's almost like a more accurate way to just look at that chart and be like, where am I? Right?
Sure.
Which I think is very, very hard to do objectively when you're looking at it on a day-to-day basis, right? Because I think all of us, not all of us, but a lot of us will look in the mirror and we'll see something very different than what our body actually looks like. So having that photo and kind of like putting it up to the chart and comparing it and seeing where's my body fat percentage, it's not going to be perfect, right? But having that range over time,
Yeah.
um, I think in a lot of ways is going to be more accurate unless you can find a place where you can weigh yourself underwater.
And I would imagine too, uh, the frequency with which you would want to do something like a DEXA scan is going to be different for somebody who is starting out versus somebody who's been doing it for a number of years because it's not going to change as rapidly for someone who's been, you know, it, I would imagine it's going to be much harder for somebody to go from 20% body fat down to 15 than it was to go from 35 down to 25.
For sure.
Yeah.
For
And
sure.
and probably take longer, I would assume, unless you're do nothing else but this. So,
Yeah, 100%. And I think there's a couple, like it all goes back to the individual where if you are focused on, let's say like you actually are, if you're going from 20 to 15, I think that's still a range where maybe you do want to focus on a deficit for a little bit, right?
hmm,
And in that case, it does make sense to still measure more often versus like if you're going from 15 to 13 or 13 to 12, right?
yeah,
Like those types of things where you're like, no, like I just want to see how far I can test my body, it's probably going to be a little bit longer of a route, right? Um,
yeah,
and so in those cases, it's like, hey, maybe I measure myself every 3 months or twice a year just to kind of see where it's shaking out. The one caveat I would throw there, though, is if you are trying out something new and you just want to see like how does my body respond, right? So like let's say you're like, I've been training an upper lower full body split for 3 years now, right? why don't I just see how a 4-day upper lower impacts my body goals, right? Like, is it going to be different? Like changing up something, because what we often see is, people will say muscle confusion, whatever you want to call it. There is some, just from like anecdotal and just from personal experience, when you try a different way of training that your body isn't used to, we often see our body respond more than
Mhm.
we're just doing the same thing over and over again. So I think that is a cool way where, like, okay, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna really commit to doing a 4-day split for the next 2 months, and then I'm gonna measure my body and just see, was there any significant difference. That I think could be a good use case for it too.
I I agree. I think everyone adapts at different rates and in different ways as well, and age
Mhm.
probably has something to do with that as well. But yeah, the reason I asked, I think we talked about this in the past, and I've never done it, but I kind of kicked it around, and I was thinking more like, well, I'll do it, you know, once a year and then see how it changed. But yeah, it. Thank you. Yep.
Yeah. Have you ever done a DEXA?
No, no, I've
Okay.
never. I really am considering it though, and then like I said, maybe like a year later, seeing where it's at because I am at the point where I plan and God willing, hopefully, if I live that long, I hope I'm 80 some years old and still lifting weights.
Yeah.
Um, so for me, the mental aspect of this is for the long haul. Well, yeah, this is just what I do now. This is part
Yeah.
of my life and what I do. And also when you mentioned about aging and losing muscle mass and such over time and every decade, I kind of was looking at it as like, well, is this a tool to kind of monitor that and see where I'm going? So,
Mhm. The what I really liked about doing a DEXA is that it just gives you a much clearer picture of what your, at least your short-term goals should be.
okay.
Because when I went, like, I had no idea what my body fat percentage was at the time. Like, I honestly thought, I was like, I don't know, I'm probably gonna be like 16, 17, 18%. Uh,
Hmm.
and I went in, and I think at the time it was like 13.2% or something,
Wow.
or like
Yeah.
12.8. And it was very different, much lower than I thought it was. And that, like, instantly my entire objective shifted,
Hmm.
right? Because at that time I was still very focused on like losing weight, losing body fat, trying, like, what's the best way to do that? And then it all instantly shifted to like, wait, why? What, do I want to be 10% body fat? Like, what am I doing here? Right. And so that shifted me into this, like, no, I'm just going to slowly now experience body recomposition over time, not
Hmm.
let my weight fluctuate too high up at this point. Like, I don't necessarily care about bulking and cutting and doing that, quicker. And then on the flip side of that, though, like, let's say you go and it's 20% body fat, right? Well, now you've got a very clear goal of like, okay, so I'm 20% body fat. Like, if I can get that into like the 15 to 18% range, I'm like
Hmm.
technically in a healthy body fat percentage range. So now I've got like a very clear anchor, right? And so if I come back in 6 months from now and I focus on a deficit for a little bit, and I see that progress, sweet. Once I'm there, then I'm just going to settle into this kind of like maintenance body recomposition mode for a long time. So that's what I think is the really powerful thing of doing one of those, is like, it just makes it so much easier rather than guessing like, where am I? What do I need to focus on? What do I need to do?
Okay.
Great question. Any other questions? Was that helpful? People feel like they learned something, or are we just repeating ourselves?
Um, I I find that the repetition is reinforcement. Sometimes it takes me, you know, 3 to 5 times to hear things to actually understand it and to be able to implement. So it was helpful to me. Thank you.
Good. That's great to hear, because we got to that when we were going over this, we got to that checklist at the bottom, and Brooks and I were like, how many times have we said this? People are like, do we really need to list this here? Because I feel like we say this every time, and he was not joking. Like, we could literally put that at the bottom of every single workshop because that's what it all comes back down to. But you're so right. There's so much information out there, and I think it gets very convoluted and it gets very, there's a lot of conflicting information. So I think the more we can kind of break back down to what actually matters and more, probably even more importantly, what doesn't matter as much as people say out there, the easier it becomes to just like actually focus on being consistent with these things.
Mm-hmm.
You could probably even add in that checklist sleep.
Do we not have that on there?
No.
No, no.
No. Adrian, that's a little bit triggering in this stage of my life.
I get it. I get it. There's a lot of stages where sleep is elusive. So, yeah.
It is, you know what, Tier, the interesting thing around sleep that like I honestly, as a new parent, that I'm kind of like starting to recognize and think about how I communicate that. Telling somebody to just sleep 7 to 8 hours is not very helpful because
Mm,
I think most people understand that, right? The question is like, how do you do that? And so
right.
it is like I think more about like, okay, well, what does actually improve that? And so like more of the things of stop scrolling before bedtime, right? Going for a morning walk, wearing blue blockers. Like I think some of those things kind of lead to better sleep, but there is a point of like sleep 7 to 8 hours is almost like telling people just eat less at this point, right? It's like, yeah, I know, but what do I do when the baby wakes up at midnight every single night and decides that she's hungry again, even though we just fed her an hour ago,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
But it is so true, and I think that one, like the really hard thing with that one is like we just need to be more objective with ourselves, right? Like, why am I scrolling on my phone at 10 p.m.? Like what is coming good? What good is coming out of that at this point, right? And I think that in many cases for a lot of people is a huge significant shift in the quality of sleep, which is super important.